Alright guys, so today's video will be talking about Ulrich. Ulrich's been one of those ships in the game now, has been not the most controversial. I think New Jersey was the most controversial when she first came out because of FDG. But she's definitely up there because a lot of people compare her with a lot of the current ultra rare battle ships. So she's in a weird spot. So we'll be talking about her today since it is her banner. Some of you guys are pulling for her. And you may be thinking, is this really worth your time or whatever, trying to go for her or whatever. So make a quick video for that. So if you guys want to see the full banner review, I have a video for this I made 2 or 3 years ago. Still pretty relevant to this very day, so go ahead and watch that. I'll go ahead and link it in the description, as well as put a little pop-up thing at the end so you guys can look at that. Let's go ahead and talk about this ship. So Ulrich has been one of those ships in the game now that isn't like a big game changer by all means. She's been pretty much in the middle of the pack, pretty much just does damage or whatever, but she was never like a star of a show or anything. Never was that big MVP like New Jersey, Bismarck II, Musashi, those ships. Never was one of those things. So let's go ahead and talk about her. So her kit primarily focuses on being on the side. If you guys don't know what I mean, the side is basically either the top section right here or the bottom section. And by doing this, she gets her buff where she's allowed to fire very, very fast because she has a reduced reload of 50%. So she basically goes double the time. In the process, she does less damage, but she fires out a lot more barrages. So that's a trade-off right there. So what makes her very unique is that her damage output is very, very consistent. Most of the time, you won't see like big fluctuation in damage output like New Jersey or FDG or sometimes even Musashi because her damage output is just mainly just main volleys and a little bit from the barrage. That's all her damage that she gets. So even though she may not be like a very crazy ship that does a lot of damage, she's very consistent. So when you have any kind of fights where there's like a lot of things on the field and not just one enemy or one target, she's very good there. A current example is the current meta fight that we have as of right now, Kirov. In Kirov's fight, she's very good here because Kirov summons ads, and that's where she can be very, very good at. Her damage output lets her just clear out multiple enemies at once, does crazy amounts of damage, and basically just really good fit for a third ship in this fleet. Now, aside from the lag, you can use New Jersey over Ulrich here because she does basically the same amount of damage as Ulrich. But the thing about New Jersey is that a lot of her damage is based on intervals, right? Now, she has that barrage at the beginning at 10 seconds, which makes it very good for fast fights. But she still has to shoot every, like, 19 to 22 seconds, depending on the gun. Whereas fights like these, where there's so many things that's just spawning non-stop, Ulrich is very, very good here. Now, again, for the past maybe 2 or 3 years now, until recently, a lot of the boss fights in this game doesn't really have much ads. Like, we had Arbiter Temperance that had the little spawn jelly that comes out. And that's pretty much it. For the most part, there's not any kinds of fights where there's consistent amount of damage. It wasn't until recently with the introduction of Hindenburg and Unzen where devs thought, oh, maybe because we know that these ships aren't tanky compared to large cruisers, and large cruisers basically have been dominating the meta for about 2 years now. Let's make it so bosses just do not do damage anymore for vanguards. Now, I don't know how long they're going to keep this up for, but if they keep doing this, then ships like Hindenburg, Unzen, Plymouth, and even Ulrich can see some spotlight because these kind of fights where there's just endless, you gotta keep endlessly doing damage, these ships are very, very good at. Now, I'm not saying Ulrich is like just instantly a god ship now. She does fall behind compared to a lot of the big ships in the game like Bismarck II and Musashi, but she's just very, very good now dealing with just a lot of targets at once. That's where she specializes at. That's what her forte is, and that's basically what she's going to be doing for the rest of her time being. Now, if you use a common setup like Bismarck II, Musashi, and Vanguard, Ulrich can also be very useful here as well too because of her third skill. Now, let me go ahead and show you guys the damage chart real quick. You see this? She's not that far off, but Bismarck II is just a monster because This ship is disgusting, and she's also getting buffed from Plymouth as well too. She doesn't fall that far behind. Like Ulrich is very good in these fights where there's just a lot of enemies. Like she's not that far behind Bismarck by all means. Like if you take off the 18% from Plymouth right here, they are very, very similar in damage output. Very similar. But Ulrich has to be on the side so she won't get Plymouth buff at all by any means. You don't want her as flagship, you want her on the side. So this skill right here, the third skill, now she gets crit damage, right? And she buffs crit damage to other ships. So if you have Ulrich on another fleet, Bismarck 2 gets 10% crit damage. Now, another thing as to why her damage output isn't as high as others, even though she has like crazy reload and like pretty sizable consistent DPS, is that she doesn't have any guaranteed crits. If you look at the big ships in the game as right now for battleships, New Jersey, her Dragon's Breath is a 100% crit rate. Yes, it can whiff a lot, but it's 100% crit, meaning it's always going to do superior damage, and it's going to crit on top of that. Musashi right here, her Thunderstorm Lightning skill, right? 50% chance to crit. It gets increased by a IJN gun. It does crazy amounts of damage because it has the crit damage on top of it. Like it has crazy, crazy damage output. Bismarck 2, also another crazy ship because not only does she has the vacuum sucker, she also has, guess what guys? The first volley of the salvo is guaranteed to crit. Now, when you have 10% firepower on this stuff on top of it, that's a lot of damage. So all these ships right now that are doing like crazy damage output for battleships have some kind of crit rate or just near high or just high crit rate, right? Ulrich, all she has is just crit damage. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Whenever they buff crit damage or they want to give a ship crit damage, I would rather they take away that crit damage and add crit rate. Crit rate is a very, very powerful stat in this game. Probably the most powerful stat in this game. Not crit damage, but crit rate. Now, yes, you can gamble a lot and just keep resetting to get that crit rate run. Like just hit all crits on 7%, but is that consistent? So this is why I put big emphasis on cat lines like Soulful Warrior, because you want to have as much crit rate as possible to get these ships off the ground. Now, if Ulrich had like 30% more crit, she'd be crazy right now. With her reload speed, she'd be disgusting. But because this skill right here just buffs crit damage, she doesn't really benefit off it too much unless you give her a crazy amount of crit rate. That's why she benefits off the black shell more compared to the white shell more, even though it sounds weird. She really wants the black shell because of the 7% crit rate, or 8%, sorry. So that's another reason why. So overall, this ship is actually not too terrible. Compare up with Bismarck 2 because Bismarck 2 does buff other battleships that are KMS, I believe, somewhere in here. I'm not sure what skill, but increasing fleet. Yeah, this one 15% firepower. She does buff that, but she's not a superstar. She's basically that one student in the class that's not salutatorian, doesn't get perfect score, but she does get A's. Sometimes B pluses, but most of the time she gets A's. Now, she's not an A plus or a star student, but she does the job. So, definitely not a bad ship. I know she got a lot of flack back in the day because no one liked her because she was bad. She was worse than New Jersey. She wasn't as good as Musashi. Definitely not as good as Bismarck 2. But she's not a bad ship, especially with Bismarck 2 buffing her. She's not a bad ship these days. Now, yes, she does excel on light and medium armor, preferably because of her skill right here. That makes it so she does do 15% more damage against them. Heavy is not too bad, though. If you give her an AP gun, she's not that bad. But again, there's much better ships out there for that. So, not a bad ship. Definitely is worth your cubes if you guys are relatively new or a mid-game player. If you have like the other ships I called though, like Musashi, New Jersey, and Bismarck 2 though, you would probably want to run them. But this ship though, definitely not bad. I think if they ever add some sort of crit rate buff to the team, you can definitely get value out of that. Now I know before anyone says it, Bismarck 1 does buff crit rate, but if you use Bismarck 1, you're griefing yourself because there are much better ships out there compared to Bismarck 1. This skill right here, I think, right? Crit rate. Yeah, 20% crit rate. You're better off running other things. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think about Ulrich. And yeah, I'll see you guys next video. Thanks for watching as always.